Did you know there is a prophet who never died? The Bible says God simply took him, but before he vanished, he was shown secrets that were hidden for thousands of years. Mentioned in the New Testament book of Jude, Enoch saw the rebellion of angels, the shape of the universe, and the final judgment of humanity. Why were his writings kept in the shadows? Today we open the ancient scrolls. This is the story of what God showed to Enoch, and only to him. To understand the visions of Enoch, we must first transport ourselves back to the dawn of human history, long before the great flood cleansed the earth. The world was a very different place. It was the era of the antediluvians, the people before the flood. In this time, humanity lived for centuries, but a shadow was growing over the lineage of Adam. The Holy Scriptures, specifically in the genealogy of Genesis and confirmed in the New Testament Gospel of Luke, identify Enoch as the seventh from Adam. This number is not accidental. It signifies a completion, a holy separateness in a generation that was rapidly spiraling into darkness. While his ancestors farmed the land and built the first cities, Enoch's eyes were fixed on the heavens. The New Testament provides a crucial key to understanding Enoch's character in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 5. It states, "By faith Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death, and he was not found, because God had taken him." But why him? What made him the candidate for the first apocalypse ever revealed to a human being? The answer lies in the moral decay of his time, a specific event recorded in ancient texts known as the descent of the Watchers. According to the ancient records attributed to Enoch, which the Apostle Jude references, the earth was not just suffering from human sin, it was suffering from a supernatural invasion. It was during the days of Jared, Enoch's father, that 200 angelic beings, known as the Watchers or Grigori, gazed down upon the earth. They saw the beauty of the daughters of men, and lust entered their hearts. These were not demons in the traditional sense, but celestial beings entrusted with overseeing the earth who decided to abandon their high station. Enoch describes in terrifying detail how these beings descended onto the summit of Mount Hermon. The mountain itself derives its name from the Hebrew word for ban, signifying the oath/curse the angels took to bind themselves to their rebellion. This was the catalyst for the visions God would soon show Enoch. The Watchers did not come in peace, they came to corrupt. They taught humanity forbidden secrets. The art of war, the making of swords and shields, the use of cosmetics for seduction, and the casting of spells and sorcery. The world turned into a bloodbath. The union between these fallen angels and human women produced the Nephilim giants of immense strength and voracious hunger, who consumed the produce of men and eventually began to devour mankind itself. The cry of the earth became deafening. It is in this context of absolute terror and supernatural corruption that Enoch stands apart. While the world engaged in sorcery and violence, Enoch walked with God. This phrase implies a direct, intimate communion. He detached himself from the society of the Watchers and retreated to solitude. It was then that the first vision occurred. Enoch did not seek it. It was thrust upon him. As described in his writings, he was given a prophetic mandate that the New Testament author Jude quotes directly in Jude 1:4, 1:5. "Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones, to execute judgment on all, and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him." This prophecy, preserved in the New Testament, was the opening salvo of Enoch's ministry. He was not preaching forgiveness to the Watchers. He was preaching judgment. God revealed to Enoch that the chaos orchestrated by the fallen angels would not last forever. Enoch was transformed from a simple patriarch into the scribe of righteousness. In his first major encounter, Enoch describes a dream vision where the clouds invited him and the stars called to him. He was physically lifted from the earth, an experience of ascension that prefigures the rapture. He was carried by the winds into the heavenly realms. There, he saw a wall built of crystals and surrounded by tongues of fire. This was the entry into the dwelling of the great glory. The terror of the scene was palpable. Enoch writes that he began to quake and shake with fear. The house was hot as fire and cold as ice. There were no material delights there, only the overwhelming presence of holiness. He saw a second house, greater than the first, built of flames of fire. And on a lofty throne sat the great glory, whose raiment was brighter than the sun and whiter than any snow. God spoke to Enoch, not with a message of comfort for the world, but with a mission. He told Enoch to go to the Watchers of heaven, who had left the high heaven and the holy eternal place, and declare their sentence. This is the great irony of Enoch's life. A mere mortal man was sent to act as a messenger and intercessor for immortal angels. This sets the stage for everything that follows. Enoch is no longer just a man. He is the bridge between a falling earth and a holy heaven. He has seen the face of God, and he has been commissioned to map the spiritual geography of the universe. In the chapters to come, we will follow Enoch as he is taken by the archangels Uriel and Raphael to see the secret storehouses of the winds, the cornerstones of the earth, and the terrifying prison awaited by the fallen stars. The journey has just begun. The silence of the earth was left far behind as the patriarch Enoch was lifted higher past the realm of the clouds and into the terrifying expanse of the spiritual cosmos. The scriptures tell us that God does not leave sin unpunished, but rarely does the human mind comprehend the geography of that punishment. In the New Testament, the book of Jude, verse 6, gives us a chilling summary of what Enoch was about to witness with his own eyes. It reads, "And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day." What Jude summarizes in a single sentence, Enoch experienced as a vivid, terrifying reality. Guided by the archangel Uriel, who is described as the angel over the world and over Tartarus, Enoch was taken to the ends of the earth. The landscape shifted dramatically. He writes of seeing a place that burned day and night, but it was not a fire of this world. It was a place where the physical laws of nature seemed to dissolve. He arrived at a chaotic territory, a terrible place where there was no water, no birds, no firmament above, and no firmly founded earth beneath. It was a desert of reality, a void prepared for a specific purpose. In this desolation, Enoch saw 7 stars of heaven bound together like great mountains, burning with fire. In biblical prophecy, stars often represent angelic beings, and here the symbolism was literal. When Enoch asked about this terrifying sight, Uriel answered him, saying that this place is the end of heaven and earth. It has become a prison for the stars and the host of heaven. These are the beings that transgressed the commandment of the Lord in the beginning of their rising, because they did not come out at their appointed times. The vision reveals that disobedience in the spiritual realm carries a cosmic weight. These beings were bound until the time when their guilt would be consummated, 10,000 years. The horror of the scene deepened as Enoch moved further into what he called the abyss. He saw a cleft in the earth, narrow and deep, extending into a bottomless darkness. From this abyss, pillars of heavenly fire fell, yet they were neither of the measure of height nor of width. It was a fire beyond dimension. This aligns with the everlasting chains under darkness mentioned by Jude. It is a paradox of fire and darkness, a place of containment for entities that once stood in the radiant presence of God, but chose the corruption of earth instead. But the journey of judgment was not limited to the fallen angels. The fate of humanity was also unveiled. Leaving the prison of the stars, Enoch was transported to the west, to a great and high mountain of hard rock. Inside this mountain, there were 4 hollow places, deep and wide and very smooth. These were not natural caves. They were created containers. Enoch, filled with wonder and fear, asked the angel Raphael, who was with him, about the purpose of these hollow spaces. Raphael revealed that these hollow places have been created for this very purpose, that the spirits of the souls of the dead should assemble therein. This is the Sheol of the Old Testament, the Hades of the New Testament, the temporary holding place of souls awaiting the final judgment. Crucially, Enoch observed that these souls were not all kept together. There was a separation. He saw the spirit of a dead man making suit, and his voice went forth to heaven and made suit. Raphael identified this spirit as Abel, whom Cain his brother had slain. This confirms that consciousness continues after death, and that justice is demanded by the victims of violence. The separation of the hollows was distinct. One place was bright and contained a spring of water. This was prepared for the spirits of the righteous, those who died in their piety. Another division was dark and foreboding, reserved for sinners who died and were buried in the earth without judgment overtaking them in their lifetime. Here, their souls are set apart in great pain until the great day of judgment and punishment. This vision destroys the idea that death is simply sleep or non-existence. Enoch saw a bustling, organized, and strictly divided spiritual ecosystem. He saw that the moral choices made on earth, whether to walk with God like he did, or to follow the way of Cain, determined the immediate geography of the soul after death. The righteous are separated from the wicked, protected by a chasm that cannot be crossed, a detail that centuries later Jesus himself would describe in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. Enoch stood there, a man of flesh and blood, looking into the waiting room of eternity. He blessed the Lord of Majesty, realizing that the chaos of the world he left behind, the violence of the giants, the corruption of the watchers, the wickedness of men, was being recorded. Nothing was forgotten. The prison was ready for the angels, and the hollows were ready for men. But this was only the beginning of the revelations. God was about to show him the mechanism of the universe itself, the very courses of the sun and the moon, and the secrets of the weather that sustains life. From the depths of the underworld and the prisons of darkness, the journey of Enoch took a sudden and glorious turn. The archangel Michael, described as the merciful and long-suffering, took charge of the patriarch to lead him toward the secrets of the north and the west. The atmosphere shifted from the oppressive heat of judgment to a radiance that defied earthly description. Enoch recounts that he went forth to a place where there was a fire burning day and night, but this was not a fire of destruction, it was a fire of glory. As they traveled, Enoch beheld a sight that would later be echoed in the visions of the Apostle John in the book of Revelation. He saw 7 magnificent mountains, each distinct from the other, yet arranged in a divine harmony. These were not random formations of geology. They were architectural masterpieces of the Creator. 3 of the mountains stood towards the east, cemented firmly, and 3 towards the south. But it was the 7th mountain that captured Enoch's awe. It stood in the midst of them, towering above the rest, reaching into the very heavens like the seat of a throne. The composition of these mountains was unlike any stone found in the quarries of men. Enoch describes them as being made of alabaster and sapphire, implying a purity and value beyond measure. The summit of the central mountain was like sapphire, and its peaks seemed to pierce the sky. This imagery aligns with the Old Testament descriptions of God's throne, often depicted with the pavement of sapphire stone, as seen by Moses and the elders of Israel in the book of Exodus. But the true wonder of this location was not the stone, but what grew upon the throne-like mountain. Encircling the summit were fragrant trees, but there was one tree that stood apart from all others. Enoch writes that he had never smelled a fragrance such as this. Its scent was not merely pleasant, it was life-giving. Its bark, its leaves, and its wood never withered and never rotted. Its fruit was beautiful, resembling the clusters of the date palm, yet radiating a vitality that suggested it contained the essence of immortality. Overcome with curiosity and a longing to understand, Enoch turned to Michael. He asked to know the nature of this tree and the truth of its purpose. It is a moment of profound humility. The man who walked with God admitting he did not understand God's mysteries without divine interpretation. Michael, the leader of the heavenly host, answered him with a revelation that connects the beginning of the Bible to its very end. He explained that this high mountain, whose summit is like the throne of God, is the place where the Holy Great One, the Lord of Glory, the Eternal King, will sit when he descends to visit the earth with goodness. This confirms that the separation between heaven and earth is not permanent. Regarding the fragrant tree, Michael issued a solemn decree. He stated that no flesh has the power to touch it at this time. It is forbidden to the mortals of this age. Its purpose is reserved for the end of days, for the period of the great judgment when all will be avenged and consummated. At that time, this tree will be given to the righteous and the holy. Its fruit shall be for food to the elect. The angel revealed a future where this tree would be transplanted to the holy place, to the temple of the Lord, the Eternal King. Those who eat of it shall rejoice with joy and be glad, and they shall enter into the holy habitation. Its fragrance shall be in their bones, and they shall live a long life on earth, such as the forefathers lived. And in their days no sorrow or plague or torment or calamity shall touch them. This is the tree of life, the same tree that was in the Garden of Eden, guarded by cherubim with flaming swords after the fall of Adam. Enoch was shown that the way to the tree was not destroyed, only hidden. The New Testament confirms this hope in Revelation 22:14. Blessed are those who wash their robes, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may go through the gates into the city. Enoch stood before the physical manifestation of eternal life, realizing that the plan of redemption was already established before the flood. He saw that God had prepared a reward for the righteous that far outweighed the temporary pleasures of sin offered by the watchers. The mountains of precious stones were not just decorations, they were the foundations of the future kingdom. Enoch blessed the God of glory, the King of the ages, who had prepared such things for the righteous and had created them and promised to give them to his people. But the tour of the cosmos was not over. From the static beauty of the tree of life, Enoch was about to be shown the dynamic engines of the universe, the places where the sun rises and sets, and the terrifying edges of the earth where the heavens burn. The journey of the patriarch shifted from the moral geography of judgment to the mechanical wonders of the cosmos. Enoch was taken to the very ends of the earth, where the dome of heaven rests upon the foundations of the world. Here, the veil between the physical and the spiritual was pulled back completely, revealing the machinery that drives the universe. This was not a universe of random chaos or cold physics, but a realm of precise, angelic administration. The Archangel Uriel, the guide over the luminaries, took center stage to reveal the secrets of time and light. Enoch saw 3 portals of heaven open in the heaven, 3 in the east, and 3 in the west. Through these portals, the winds of heaven blow. These were not mere breezes. They were the pillars of the sky. Enoch describes seeing the winds that turn the heaven and cause the star to set. He saw the winds that carry the clouds and the winds that support the earth. It was a vision of a dynamic, interconnected system where spiritual forces, the winds, were the engines driving physical reality. But the greatest wonder was the movement of the lights. Uriel showed Enoch the laws of the sun. Enoch saw the solar orb not merely as a ball of fire, but as a chariot driven by the wind. He witnessed the sun rising from the eastern portals and setting in the western portals. The precision was absolute. There are 6 great gates in the east and 6 in the west. As the year progresses, the sun shifts from one gate to another, determining the length of days and the heat of the seasons. When the sun is in the 4th gate, the day and night are equal. As it moves to the 5th and 6th, the days lengthen and the heat intensifies. Enoch recorded that the sun has names, and its nature is fire. He saw that the chariot of the sun is driven by the wind, and when it sets, it does not simply disappear. It returns via the north, hidden from the earth, to reach the eastern gates again, ready to obey the command of the Creator. This cycle is a testament to obedience. Unlike the watchers who left their station, the sun never deviates from its path. Then, Uriel showed him the moon. Her path is like the path of the sun, and she too is driven in a chariot by the wind. But her light is different. Enoch learned that the sun is 7 times brighter than the moon, yet the moon has a specific role in the counting of time. He watched her wax and wane, receiving her light from the sun and transferring it through 14 portions. The angel explained that the moon is the clock of the heavens, governing the months and the feast days. Uriel showed Enoch the law of the moon's transfer, how she becomes full and how she completely disappears, governed by specific portals that differ from the sun's. The stars were also accounted for. Uriel showed Enoch that every star has a name and a position. They are not infinite or uncountable to God. They are like an army, each soldier knowing his rank. Enoch saw that the stars enter through portals and are weighed and measured. He saw that some stars are leaders, governing over seasons and days, leading thousands of other stars. This hierarchy in the heavens mirrored the hierarchy of angels. However, Uriel gave a warning within the astronomy lesson. He revealed that in the days of sinners the year shall be shortened, the rain will be withheld, and the heavens will stand still. The fruits of the earth shall be backward and shall not grow in their time, and the fruits of the trees shall be withheld. Even the moon shall alter her order and not appear at her time. This cosmic disruption is the response of creation to the sin of humanity. When men corrupt their way, nature itself rebels. Enoch was commanded to look at the tablets of heaven and read what was written upon them. He looked and read the deeds of men and of all the children of flesh that shall be upon the earth to the remotest generations. He saw the history of the world written in the stars and on the heavenly tablets before it even happened. Overwhelmed by the precision, the glory, and the terrifying order of the cosmos, Enoch fell to his face. He realized that the God he served was not just a tribal deity, but the Lord of the spirits, the master of the celestial machinery. Every sunrise is an act of obedience. Every moon phase is a decree. The universe is a temple, and the lights are its ministers, keeping a rhythm that humanity had foolishly tried to break. With the secrets of the lights now written in his heart, Enoch was prepared for the most disturbing vision of all, the prophecy of the great flood that would wipe away the world he knew. The cosmic tours had changed Enoch. He was no longer a man of the earth, but a citizen of the heavens living in exile among men. However, God had one final, terrifying truth to reveal, not about the stars or angels, but about the immediate fate of his own world. Before the final judgment of eternity, there would be a judgment of water. This revelation came not during an ascent to heaven, but in the terrifying intimacy of a dream. Enoch recounts that he was sleeping in the house of his grandfather, Mahalalel, when a vision seized him with violence. In this dream, he did not see the glory of God. He saw the death of the earth. He watched as the canopy of heaven collapsed and fell upon the earth. When the heavens fell, the earth itself was cleft asunder. He saw the mountains collapsing upon mountains, and hills sinking upon hills. The tall trees were torn up by their roots and thrown into the abyss. The earth opened its mouth, and everything was swallowed into a great dark void. The The realism of the destruction was so intense that Enoch shouted in his sleep, his voice ringing out in the night, "The earth is destroyed." His grandfather woke him, terrified by his scream, asking what had happened. When Enoch recounted the vision, he realized it was not symbolic. It was a literal forecast of the physical mechanics of the Great Flood. The tectonic plates would break, the fountains of the deep would burst, and the stability of the world would dissolve. Enoch rose and prayed, begging the Lord of Glory not to destroy every human seed, but to leave a remnant for the earth. This prayer for a remnant was answered in the most peculiar way. The narrative shifts from Enoch to his grandson, Lamech. A child was born to Lamech, but this was no ordinary infant. The ancient text describes the birth of Noah with startling, supernatural details that hint at the anxiety of that age. When the child was born, his body was whiter than snow and redder than the bloom of a rose. His hair was as white as wool and long. But it was his eyes that terrified the midwife. When he opened his eyes, they illuminated the entire house like the sun, and the whole house was exceedingly bright. Even more miraculously, when he was taken from the hand of the midwife, he opened his mouth and blessed the Lord of heaven. Lamech was struck with fear. He fled to his father, Methuselah, with a trembling confession. He said, "I have begotten a strange son, diverse from an unlike man, and resembling the sons of the God of heaven." Lamech feared that the child was not his, but the offspring of the Watchers, the fallen angels who had been corrupting the bloodlines of humanity. In a world overrun by Nephilim giants, the purity of the human genome was the greatest treasure and the greatest worry. Lamech pleaded, "His nature is different, and he is not like us. I fear that in his days a wonder may be wrought on the earth." Methuselah, hearing his son's distress, traveled to the ends of the earth to find Enoch. By this time, Enoch was living apart from men, dwelling at the edge of the visible world. Hearing the call of his son, Enoch came to him. Methuselah recounted the birth of the glowing child, and Lamech's fear that the bloodline had been corrupted by the angels. Enoch's answer was the bridge between the vision of destruction and the hope of survival. He reassured Methuselah that the child was indeed of human stock, pure and undefiled. But the child's strange appearance was a sign of the supernatural event to come. Enoch prophesied, "The Lord will do a new thing on the earth." He explained that the generation of Jared, his father, had transgressed the covenant, mixing with the angels. Because of this, the lawlessness was complete. Enoch declared that a massive destruction would come upon the whole earth, a deluge, and it would destroy everything for 1 year. But this child, this glowing infant, would be the survivor. Enoch commanded Methuselah, "Call his name Noah, for he shall be left to you." The name Noah means rest or comfort. He and his 3 sons would be saved when all the giants and the sorcerers were washed away. The chapter closes with a somber realization. The glowing eyes of Noah were not a sign of angelic corruption, but a sign of divine selection. He was marked by God. Enoch sent Methuselah back with the truth. The end is certain, the earth will sink as seen in the dream, but the seed of mankind will be preserved in this one strange child. The countdown to the rain had begun. The visions of Enoch did not end with the structure of the cosmos or the mechanics of the weather. As his spirit matured in the presence of the divine, the method of revelation shifted from literal geography to complex allegory. In a profound dream known as the Animal Apocalypse, Enoch was shown the entire history of humanity, from the Garden of Eden to the final judgment, enacted by beasts of the field. This was not a child's fable, but a coded roadmap of history where the nature of a soul determined its physical form. Enoch writes that he saw a white bull come forth from the earth. This was Adam, the first man, created in purity. Alongside him came a female heifer, Eve. But the peace of the herd was short-lived. A black bull was born, representing Cain, and a red bull, representing Abel. The darkness of the black bull consumed the red, chasing him from the earth. This was the first bloodshed, and Enoch watched as the black bull multiplied, filling the earth with dark cattle. The purity of the original creation was staining, generation by generation. Then the vision shifted to the heavens. Enoch saw a single star fall from the sky. This star did not burn out. It landed among the cattle and transformed. It began to pasture with the cows. This was the leader of the Watchers. Soon, many other stars cast themselves down, their light replaced by lust. They transformed into bulls and mounted the cows of the earth. The result was a biological nightmare. The cows did not give birth to calves, but to elephants, camels, and donkeys. These beasts were the Nephilim, giants of varying stature and ferocity. The elephants fought the camels, and the camels fought the donkeys. The oxen were terrified. The violence was so absolute that the earth itself seemed to scream. Then Enoch saw 7 white men. the archangels, descend from heaven. They were not animals. They remained in the likeness of men, signifying their uncorrupted nature. They seized the first falling star and cast him into a deep abyss. They gathered the elephants and camels and incited them to destroy one another in battle. Finally, a boat was built for the one remaining righteous white bull, Noah, and the water trough of the earth was filled until the highest peaks were covered. The silence of the water cleansed the blood from the land. As the waters receded, the white bull emerged, and from him the species changed. The allegory shifted from cattle to sheep. A white ram was born Abraham, and from him came a white sheep, Isaac. The lineage of the chosen people was established. These sheep were distinct. They were vulnerable, requiring a shepherd, unlike the wild bulls of the nations. Enoch watched as the sheep were led into a field of wolves, the land of Egypt. The wolves gave them no water and oppressed them until the Lord of the sheep descended. The wolves were drowned in a sea of blood and water, and the sheep escaped into the wilderness. But the most chilling part of the vision concerned the era of the kings and the eventual exile. The sheep began to go blind. They strayed from the path their Lord had shown them. They built a great house, the temple. But their eyes remained clouded. Because of their blindness, the Lord of the sheep made a terrifying decision. He did not destroy them himself. He handed them over. Enoch saw the Lord of the sheep summon 70 shepherds. These were not human kings, but the angelic princes of the nations, the spiritual powers to whom God assigned authority over the pagan world. The Lord commanded these 70 shepherds to pasture the sheep, but he gave them strict limits. He told them they could destroy some, but they were not to exceed the number he commanded. However, Enoch watched in horror as the shepherds betrayed their trust. They began to tear the sheep apart, delivering more to the sword than was commanded. They reveled in the destruction of the chosen flock. An angel, the scribe of heaven, stood by and recorded every excess. He wrote down every sheep that was killed unlawfully by the 70 shepherds. He ascended to the Lord and showed him the book of destruction, pleading for the sheep. But the Lord sat silent, allowing the time of the Gentiles to run its course. This vision explained the suffering of the righteous. The world was currently under the stewardship of corrupt spiritual powers who hated the flock. Enoch realized that history was a long war between the blind sheep and the rogue shepherds. He saw the empires of Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome rise as ravenous beasts, eagles, vultures, and kites, swooping down to pick the eyes out of the sheep. It was a vision of total despair. Were it not for the promise of the end, the scribe was still writing. The books were being kept. The 70 shepherds would not rule forever. Their time was numbered, and the Lord of the sheep was preparing to return to the pasture, not as a distant observer, but as a judge with a sword. After witnessing the wars of the stars and the history of the world played out by beasts, Enoch did not keep these secrets to himself. The time had come to pass the torch. He gathered his son Methuselah and his entire household for a final solemn discourse. This was not a conversation about the weather or the harvest. It was the unveiling of the apocalypse of weeks, a prophecy that divides the entirety of human history, past, present, and future, into 10 distinct periods. This structure reveals that God does not view time as an endless, chaotic river, but as a carefully measured architecture with a definitive beginning and a terrifyingly glorious end. Enoch opened his mouth and read from the tablets of heaven, declaring that he had been born in the first week, a time when justice and righteousness still lingered on the earth before the corruption fully took hold. But he warned them of the second week, where great wickedness would arise and deceit would spring up. This was the era of the flood, the first end of the world, where only a few were saved. He traced the timeline forward through the third week, describing the rise of a man chosen as the plant of righteousness judgment, referring to the patriarch Abraham, whose posterity would become the plant of righteousness forevermore. In the fourth week, he saw visions of the holy and righteous suffering, culminating in a law being given to all generations, the Mosaic law at Sinai, and a boundary being set for the nations. The vision moved to the fifth week, a time of glory where the house of the great king was built, the Temple of Solomon. But glory in the hands of men is fleeting. Enoch prophesied the sixth week with a heavy heart, foreseeing that all who lived in it would be blinded. The hearts of the people would stray from wisdom, and, as a result, the house of the kingdom would be burnt with fire, and the chosen race would be dispersed to the winds. This was the Babylonian exile and the scattering of Israel, a tragedy written in the stars long before the first stone of the temple was laid. Then Enoch spoke of the seventh week, an apostate generation. He described this era as one of many deeds, but all of them are deeds of violence. It is a time of confusion, spiritual blindness, and moral decay. However, at the very close of this dark week, a light flickers. The elect righteous are chosen from the eternal plant of righteousness to receive sevenfold instruction concerning all of God's creation. This marks the turning point of history, the return of understanding to a world drowning in ignorance. It is in the eighth week that the tone of the prophecy shifts from suffering to conquest. Enoch calls this the week of righteousness. Here, a sword is given to all the righteous, not necessarily a sword of steel, but a sword of judgment and truth. With this weapon, they shall execute judgment on the wicked oppressors. The prophecy states that sinners will be delivered into the hands of the righteous. This is the ultimate reversal of the status quo. No longer are the faithful the victims, they become the instruments of divine justice. During this week, the house of the great king is built again, but this time in glory, intended to last forever. The ninth week reveals the righteous judgment to the whole world. All the works of the godless vanish from the whole earth. The world is written down for destruction, meaning the systems of corruption are marked for deletion. And all men shall look to the path of uprightness. It is the global awakening that humanity has yearned for, the end of deception. Finally, the 10th week arrives. This is the consummation of the ages. It is the seventh part of the 10th week, the great eternal judgment. Enoch saw that this judgment would be executed specifically upon the Watchers, the fallen angels who started the rebellion millennia ago. But the transformation is not just political or spiritual, it is cosmological. Enoch saw the first heaven pass away. It simply ceased to be. In its place, a new heaven appeared, and all the powers of the heavens were given sevenfold light. The dim, corrupted universe is replaced by one of overwhelming brilliance. In this context, Enoch explained the tragedy of wisdom. He told his children that wisdom once went forth to make her dwelling among the children of men, but she found no dwelling place. She wandered the earth, knocking on the doors of cities and hearts, but was rejected. So wisdom returned to her place and took her seat among the angels. In her absence, iniquity went forth from her chambers. Unlike wisdom, iniquity found those whom she did not seek and dwelt with them, being welcomed like rain in a desert and dew on a thirsty land. This explains the state of the world. It is a place where wisdom is an exile and iniquity is a celebrated guest. Enoch concluded his teaching with an admonition to his children to love righteousness and walk therein. He assured them that the paths of righteousness are worthy of being accepted, while the paths of unrighteousness lead to sudden destruction. He saw that in the last days, men would alter and pervert the words of righteousness, inventing their own religions and writing books of lies. But he promised that for the elect, the books of truth would be opened, and they would be given wisdom, and they would believe in them and rejoice. The separation is final. There is a path of death and a path of life, and the weeks of history are counting down to the moment when the choice will be irrevocable. The sword is being sharpened, and the new heaven is waiting to be unveiled. The patriarch Enoch, having traversed the heavens and peered into the abyss, turned his face back toward the earth for a final series of admonitions. This was no longer a tour of the universe, it was a courtroom summons. In the section known as the Epistle of Enoch, the tone shifts from wonder to a thunderous warning directed at those who would live in the last days. Enoch understood that the ultimate struggle of humanity would not be against monsters or giants, but against the seduction of wealth and the arrogance of the human heart. He began by dismantling the greatest excuse of mankind. He declared with absolute certainty, sin has not been sent upon the earth, but man of himself has created it. This was a radical theological statement. It stripped away the defense that humanity was merely a victim of fate or circumstance. Enoch argued that while the Watchers brought corruption, the human will embrace it. Therefore, those who commit it shall derive a heavy curse from it. He saw a generation that would blame their environment, their stars, or their ancestors for their wickedness, but God held the individual soul accountable. Enoch then launched into a series of terrifying woes, a rhetorical structure that Jesus himself would echo centuries later. Enoch cried out across time to the wealthy and the powerful who believed their security lay in gold and stone. Woe to you, ye rich, for ye have trusted in your riches, and from your riches shall ye depart. He explained the spiritual physics of wealth. Because they did not remember the Most High in the days of their prosperity, they would be forgotten in the days of judgment. He saw men building their houses with sin, meaning their foundations were laid upon fraud, oppression, and the suffering of others. he warned. Woe to you who build your houses through the grievous toil of others, and all their building materials are the bricks and stones of sin. I tell you, ye shall have no peace. But the most haunting aspect of this chapter is the revelation of the witnesses. Enoch addressed the secret sinners, those who commit crimes in the dark and say in their hearts, no one sees us. No one knows. Enoch revealed that the physical world itself is recording the deeds of men. He told them that the rain, the dew, and the clouds are not merely weather, they are witnesses. Observe the rain, how it falls from the clouds and comes upon the earth. Think of the dew and the sun. All these give testimony against you. He went further, suggesting that the very walls of a man's house would testify against him. The stone cries out from the wall, and the beam answers it. There is no privacy from the Creator. Every lie spoken, every act of violence committed in secret is absorbed by the environment and written in the books of heaven. The holy angels, who watch from above, record every day. Enoch warned, do not think in your spirit, nor say in your heart that ye do not know, and that your sins are not seen. They are written down every day in the presence of the Most High. The terror of the sinner is contrasted with the despair of the righteous. Enoch acknowledged that in this life, the wicked often prosper, while the holy suffer. He spoke to the souls of the righteous who have died, those who went to the grave in grief, whose bodies were like the flower of the field that withered. He recounted their lament. We have died in darkness, and in our tribulation, we have been equal to the sinners. It is a raw, honest admission of the unfairness of life. But Enoch commanded them, fear not. He revealed that while their bodies turn to dust, their spirits are preserved in the treasuries of heaven. He promised that the portals of heaven shall be opened to them, and that their cry for justice has entered into the presence of the great glory. He assured them, ye shall shine as the lights of heaven, ye shall be seen, and the portals of heaven shall be opened to you. Enoch then turned back to the sinners with a chilling description of the psychological terror of the judgment. He asked them, when the Most High shall bring a flood of fire upon you, where will ye flee, and where will ye find deliverance? He described a scene where the elements of nature, the water and the fire, are weaponized by God. He asked, who can speak to the rain that it should not rain? Who can force the sun to shine if God withholds it? The powerlessness of man against the forces of nature is a preview of his powerlessness against the Creator. The chapter concludes with a vision of the great judgment, where the masks are ripped off. Enoch foresaw a time when the books of the unrighteous would be opened. He warned against those who alter the words of truth and write books of their own words. This was a prophecy against false religions and secular ideologies that would try to rewrite the moral laws of the universe. He declared that despite their efforts to change the narrative, the truth remains written in heaven. The righteous, who held fast to the law of the Lord despite their suffering, will rise from the earth. Their spirits will be clothed in light, and their garments of life will never grow old. The separation is absolute. The rich who trusted in gold will find their gold cannot buy a drop of water, while the poor who trusted in God will inherit the stars. The trial is over. The verdict is written. As the revelations of Enoch drew to a close, the scope of his vision expanded from the specific sins of humanity to the cosmic reaction of the universe itself. The patriarch stood as a solitary figure against a backdrop of impending doom, delivering a message that the physical world is inextricably linked to the spiritual condition of its inhabitants. In these final admonitions, Enoch describes a terrifying sympathy between the Creator and his creation. When God moves, the universe does not merely watch, it convulses. Enoch declares that in those days the mountains shall leap like rams, and the hills shall skip like lambs satisfied with milk. This is not a poetic metaphor for joy, but a description of tectonic instability. He warns that the heaven of heaven shall quake and tremble, and the host of the Most High shall be shaken. If the angels themselves, beings of immense power and proximity to the divine throne, tremble at the visitation of the Lord, what hope is there for the sinners of the earth? Enoch asked a piercing question to the wicked. And ye, O ye children of men, do ye not tremble and fear? He paints a picture of absolute entrapment. He asks where the wicked will flee when the rain is withheld and the dew is stopped. But more terrifying is the reaction of the sea. Enoch prophesies that when the Most High sends forth his fury, the waters will recoil. The sea shall retire, and the fish shall dry up. The very depths of the ocean, which men often view as a place of mystery and escape, will become a dry witness against them. He mocks the confidence of those who build ships and navigate the waves, reminding them that it is the Lord who placed the sand for the bound of the sea, a barrier it dares not cross. If the roaring waves fear him, how can a man, whose life is but a breath, stand in defiance? The focus then shifts to the futility of false hope. Enoch addresses the idolatry that had infected his generation and would plague the generations to come. He speaks with scorn of those who worship stones and graven images of gold and silver and wood and clay. He condemns those who worship impure spirits and demons and all kinds of idols not according to knowledge. He reveals the tragic irony. They get no help from them. The idols are deaf and blind, yet men entrust their souls to them. Enoch warns that these false gods will not only fail to save, they will become a source of shame. Their eyes will be blinded through the fear of their heart, and in their dreams they shall be led astray. But amidst this thunder of judgment, there is a tender moment of transmission. The narrative zooms in on the relationship between Enoch and his son, Methuselah. Enoch knows his time on earth is finished. He is not dying, but he is departing. He calls Methuselah and his brothers and speaks to them with the urgency of a final testament. "I have guided you and given you the books of wisdom," he declares. "Hand them down to the generations of the world." This is a crucial plot point in the history of Revelation. Enoch was not writing for his own vanity. He was writing for a survival capsule. He commands Methuselah to preserve the books from the burden of the flood. He refers to this wisdom as wisdom beyond their thoughts. It is a knowledge that transcends the survival instincts of eating and drinking. It is the roadmap of the cosmos, the calendar of the true years, and the history of the Watchers. Enoch entrusts the intellectual and spiritual heritage of mankind to his son, knowing that Methuselah will be the link to Noah, and Noah to the New World. Enoch gives a specific blessing to those who will eventually read these words in the distant future. He speaks of the righteous who shall sleep. He assures them that although they die, their spirits are not extinguished. "Fear not, ye souls of the righteous," he comforts. "Be hopeful, ye that have died in righteousness." He reveals that the angels remember them for good before the great glory. The names of the righteous are not written in the dust of the earth, but in the presence of the Holy One. He contrasts this with the terrifying reality of the sinners who are dead and buried. He describes their descent into Sheol, where darkness and chains and a burning flame await. He warns that their spirits shall be slain in hell, a generation that passes away in darkness because they despise the law of the Lord. The chapter concludes with a sense of imminent departure. The atmosphere is heavy with the static of a coming storm. The earth is groaning. The waters are waiting for the command to burst forth. Enoch stands as the final barrier between the patience of God and the judgment of God. He has seen the beginning in the garden, and he has seen the end in the lake of fire. Now he stands ready to be taken, leaving his written testimony as a warning beacon for anyone willing to listen before the rain begins to fall. The books are sealed. The message is delivered. The final countdown has begun. The earthly mission of Enoch had reached its conclusion. The books were written, the warnings were delivered, and the seeds of wisdom had been planted in the hands of his son Methuselah. The Bible records his departure with a brevity that masks the glory of the event. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. But the ancient texts reveal that this was not a quiet disappearance, but a thunderous ascension that shattered the barrier between mortality and immortality. Enoch describes the moment the chariots of the Spirit arrived. He was not stripped of his body by death, the common enemy of mankind. Instead, he was transfigured. He writes that his spirit was translated and his body was melted like wax before the fire, only to be reconstituted into something imperishable. He was lifted on the wings of the wind, past the clouds, past the stars, past the portals of the sun and moon he had so carefully studied, until he arrived at the heaven of heavens. There, he stood before the Ancient of Days. This is the ultimate vision of the Creator, described as having a head like white wool, sitting on a throne of glory. But in this final revelation, Enoch saw another figure standing beside the Ancient of Days. He saw the Son of Man, a being whose countenance was full of grace, like one of the holy angels. Enoch asked the angel who went with him, "Who is this, and from whence is he, and why does he go with the Ancient of Days?" The answer he received is the theological climax of his entire life. The angel answered, "This is the Son of Man who has righteousness, with whom dwells righteousness, and who reveals all the treasures of that which is hidden." Enoch was shown that before the sun and the signs were created, before the stars of the heaven were made, his name was named before the Lord of spirits. He was chosen and hidden before him, before the creation of the world, and he shall be before him forever. This was a vision of the pre-existent Messiah, the King who would one day descend to judge the earth. Enoch saw the final destiny of this Son of Man. He saw him sit on the throne of glory, and the sum of judgment was given unto him. He saw the kings and the mighty of the earth, who had oppressed the weak and trusted in their armies, fall down before him. They would petition for mercy, but the time for mercy had passed. Enoch writes that they shall be terrified, and downcast of countenance, and pain shall seize them when they see that Son of Man sitting on the throne of his glory. Then, the final sentence was executed upon the watchers. The 10,000 years of imprisonment in the abyss were over. Enoch watched as Azazel, Semyaza, and the armies of the fallen stars were led out of their prison, not for release, but for the second death. They were cast into the burning furnace of fire, forever removed from the presence of the light they had rejected. The corruption that had started on Mount Hermon was finally cleansed from the universe. But for the righteous, the vision was one of unutterable peace. Enoch saw the new heaven and the new earth. In this renovated cosmos, there was no more labor, no more toil, and no more fear. The righteous shall be in the light of the sun, and the elect in the light of eternal life. The days of their life shall be unending, and the days of the holy without number. They shall seek not gold nor silver, for their treasure is the presence of the Lord of spirits. Enoch saw that the partition between God and man was removed. He saw the righteous walking in the holy fire, eating of the tree of life that had been preserved for this very moment. He saw that wisdom was no longer an exile, but poured out like water upon the congregation of the holy. As the vision faded and Enoch took his place among the holy ones, never to return to the earth as a mortal man, he left behind a legacy that would survive the coming flood. His books, preserved by Noah, served as a witness through the ages. They remind us that the world is not a random accident, but a moral drama headed toward a specific conclusion. The story of Enoch is not just history, it is prophecy. It tells us that there is a watcher for every deed, a judge for every sin, and a savior for every soul that walks with God. The generation of the flood ignored the warning and perished in the water. The final generation faces a judgment of fire. The question that echoes from the ancient scrolls to the modern heart is simple. When the books are opened and the Ancient of Days takes his seat, where will you be found? The tour of the heavens is over. The reality of eternity has begun.